Yeah, yes, yes. Thank you. It's my great pleasure to welcome our today's speaker, Samran. I would also like to welcome our Bangalore chapter cash chair, Dr. Dinesh, General Secretary, Dr. Parmeshwarachari, Treasurer, Ayan Datta, Vice Chair, Alok Das, myself, Dr. Jalaja, IEEE BIT Branch Counselor, and IEEE Cash Chair-elect, Bangalore chapter will be your host. Before we get started, IEEE Bangalore section was established in 1977. It is one of the most vibrant as well as dynamic IEEE section around the globe. IEEE Circuits and Systems Society is a leading technical society that promotes the advancement of theory, analysis, design tools, and implementation of circuits and system, etc. If you are a IEEE CASH student members and faculty members are also entitled for various IEEE awards, subsidized registration fees to attend any educational resources to member fee of charges on Cash Resource Center, free electronics access to the proceeding of Cash Conference, multiple other benefits. In this regard, we would also like to invite you to start IEEE Cash student chapters in your esteemed college. If anybody interested to form a new IEEE Cash student chapter, please contact us. So now I would like to introduce our today's speaker, Professor Samran. He is currently working in Intel. He is one of the member of DTR committee worldwide. He has 22 years of experience in the semiconductor industry. His domain of expertise has been around DRAM controllers and subsystems and has 4 issued patent in this field. This involved the design and architecture. He started his career in Wipro. He has spent a brief suits in Canon. Most of his career, around 15 years, spent in the Intel. Thank you, sir. Platform is yours now.
Do you hear me clearly? Is there
yes,
an echo?
Yes. No, sir. No, sir.
Okay.
No, it's fine. So perfectly fine.
Okay, so thanks a lot, Dr. Jalaja, for that wonderful introduction. And apart from that, giving me the opportunity to speak here, I wanted to relate a personal anecdote regarding why I am thankful to IEEE in general. From my college, I got the opportunity to attend one IEEE VLSI conference when I was second year in my university. And at that point of time, I did not understand much about VLSI, but I got this opportunity to attend a conference in a swanky hotel in Hyderabad. And maybe a little bit of the topic, it fascinated me. And then I decided to stick with the field of VLSI. And here I am after 22 years of experience. And so for that, I would like to thank IEEE in some form. So now without any further delay, let me start with the talk. I hear a kind of an echo in my own microphone. So maybe I will just mute mine. Just 1 second.
So you can use a headset that will cancel the echo.
Yeah, I am using a headset.
Okay.
I'm using a headset already because I am hearing my own voice with an echo, which is slightly disturbing.
So I would like to request all the other participants to mute their microphone.
Hello. Okay, I still hear it, but maybe I will proceed anyway.
Clear, sir. It is clear. You can go ahead.
Sure. So I have no idea what is the component of the audience. Let me assume that it is a diverse audience, and the word DRAM, some people might be at expert at, and some people might be novice. So this is a article with about 28 slides, which is thoroughly like too much for this 1 hour session. So I will like to focus on some key slides. I will take my time, and maybe towards the end, I will throw the floor open for questions. And in between, if there is any question, please feel free to interrupt and ask. So first of all, what is DRAM? It is dynamic random access memory. Now, why is it random access memory? Because the contents can be accessed in any order. And what I mean by that is, in the beginning, if you remember, in the 1970s or 80s, the memory used to be on a magnetic tape or magnetic disks. And those used to be very sequential commands. Or in electronic microarchitecture, you will see FIFOs. And there also, you can access when you pop out the previous entries. So things are sequential there. As opposed to that, in the DRAM, you can access the contents in any order. Any address you can read or write. That is why it is random access memory. Why is it dynamic? There is something called SRAM, which is static. What is so dynamic about the DRAMs? The dynamism is in the way memory is stored in the DRAM. It is stored as junction capacitors of transistors, and which decays with time. And therefore, if anybody is interacting with the DRAM, they would have to make sure that the decay does not go below an unacceptable limit. And therefore, we need to do some extra operations apart from the read and write. And those are typically operations like refreshes. And all this makes this memory dynamic as opposed to a static RAM. Now, why is this important? Because so you just saw that there is a lot of overhead for accessing this memory, but we tolerate the overhead because the DRAM is much smaller, faster than the SRAM. This gives us high speed and extremely high memory capacity. These capacity and speed improve the performance significantly. And that is why in spite of being dynamic, in spite of needing more non-read write overhead, DRAMs had been popular since the 1970s. People have predicted the death of DRAM for quite some time now, but it is still there. Yes, there are other alternatives coming, but my guess is that in the market, at least next 10 years, I do not see chances of DRAM disappearing. So any questions here?
So people can write their questions in QA section, and we'll take those questions from time to time. Maybe at the interval of 20 minutes, we'll stop and try to answer those questions.
Right. Thanks. If somebody can read those questions to me, maybe Mr. Alok Das, then it would be helpful. I will proceed with the presentation.
Sure.
Just one moment. This echo which I am hearing is disturbing me a lot. I will take 1 or 2 minutes to see if I can correct that. Okay.
Okay, that should be fine.
Am I audible now?
Yes.
Yeah, but the echo is still there.
But we cannot hear any echo.
Just 1 second. Hello. Yeah, I think the echo is still there, and hence I will go slow. Okay,
Okay, somebody.
sure. When we talk about DRAM, you will hear multiple types in the industry. There is the SDRAM, the synchronous DRAM. This went out of favor around 2002. After that, it has been always DDR, dual data array. You might have also heard about LPDDR, the low power DDRAM. This is the mainstay of all the mobile processors. So in the Qualcomms of the world, most of their system would be made for LPDDR. Whereas in systems with heavy performance requirement in the servers, say in the Intel world or high-end clients, you will see the DDRs. There is another family called GDDR. Those are for graphics. You will see the NVIDIAs having most of the controller here. It's not that other companies do not make the DDR, LPDDR, or GDDR, but I just wanted to give you the sense of the industry in general. The interesting part is that the basic core or the basic architecture is the same for all this DRAM. So those of you who are interested would be perfectly served if you know the basics of anyone, and you will be able to appreciate the rest. That's all on this slide. I will move to the next one. Too involved, I will skip this. Same here. If we have time, we can get back to this. I'm trying to keep it high level. So next is the terminology introduction. Alok Das, I am putting my speaker on, not the speaker, the headphone on mute. So I will keep on talking. It will prevent the echo. And at the end of the slide, I will unblock it again so that I can hear your feedback. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So let us get familiar with the terminology. So the first is, in the field of DRAMs, is what we call a device. What is a device? It is a discrete component. If I show you, in fact, there will be a picture later. It is the typical black chip which you can see, and that is the basic DRAM device. While talking about DRAMs, you would be hearing terms like bank, bank groups, row column, page, and rank. All of these entity, which I have listed from here to here, are inside that black chip, meaning it is not visible unless until we break open that chip. Okay, but for understanding the memory hierarchy organization, it is important to know what these are. At the level of this talk, I would say that these are levels of hierarchies which is necessary to access the data from the DRAM. But if I tell you physically, show me a bank, show me a bank group, show me a row column, show me a page, show me a rank, you cannot unless until you break open the device and watch it under a microscope. Okay, to the naked eye, what you can watch is a device, and I will show a picture later. Okay, the next comes is a DIMM. Using, even though one device is a memory, but you will seldom find, in fact, I challenge you to find any industrial applications except embedded where you will be seeing one black chip by itself. No, using many such devices, which is the smallest unit, you make up something called DIMM, dual inline memory module. And these are the things which are available in the market by the vendor. You also can, so you can also see this with the naked eye. This is the component which you, if you are the kind of the person who assemble their own system or buy some upgrades, you can buy and you can put it into the slots and increase your memory capacity. And for terminology purpose, ECC DIMM is just another variation where ECC stands for error correcting code. Meaning what has happened is that over time, as the memories have become higher and higher speed, you start getting errors during operation. Meaning you access a address, you might have written a 0x23 there, one bit got flipped, and you are getting a 0x2F maybe, or no, if one bit flips, you will get a 0x27. So these can happen in high speed operations. And if you are using ECC DIMMs, you have the flexibility to tolerate a certain amount of error, even if it happens in the DIMM. So these are some of the terminologies related to the DRAM. I will now again put my speaker, not the speaker, the headphone on to see if there is any feedback. Alok Das, could you hear this last slide which I spoke?
Yeah, it was perfectly fine. There was no issues.
Okay, thank you. So let me move to the next slide. I again put the speaker on mute. Yes. Now I cannot hear others speak, but I hope you guys can hear me. So there is, when talking about the DRAMs, there is this concept of a channel. You will see people talk about this processor is dual channel DRAMs, quad channel DRAMs. What is a channel? So you see, channel is when it is a unit of memories which share the address bus, which share the data bus, which share the commands bus, but it does not share the chip select. And what happens by adding multiple channels to a processor, this is, I have shown an Intel core, means it's a processor. By connecting multiple channels, you can access more memory in parallel, in effect, increasing your bandwidth. As you have higher bandwidth, any system would like to have that. So you increase the number of channels, you get twice the bandwidth. The question would be, why then not add 4 channels, 6 channels, 8 channels? People do it for the higher end, but everything comes at a cost. You go for higher channels, you pay for higher area. After some time, because of these channels shown by a nice red line here are actually, they are a lot of pins, and those pins will take up the boundary pads. So the chip becomes bigger, and the chip becomes bigger, the cost increases a lot. And then since the chip is manufactured in millions and millions, so the cost goes much, much higher. So yes, the systems which are high cost, for which there are, you can realize high prices, you do have higher number of channels. But maybe for your mobile phone or for low-end applications, there is no necessity. It is all about trade-off, right? There is no necessity to add higher channels. You save the cost, you lose the bandwidth available, but then your application is generally okay with it, right? So this is the concept of a DRAM channel. Anybody talking about the DRAM will definitely come across this term channel. And I hope after this, you know, or roughly know what a channel is all about. I will again put on the microphone. Was I audible? Any questions?
So, Shambharan, there is a like three dots in your screen, just at the right, from the right second button. If you click that, the top of the pop-up box, there is a QA option.
Okay. Okay, I see that.
Yeah, click on that, then you will see the questions that is coming towards you. Since you are the host, I think you will also get the questions. Yeah. So, Dr. Jalaja, are you getting any questions?
Okay, I will put the headphone on mute again because I think I can see some questions, and I would take a few of them.
Okay.
I can see the question. I'm flashing them on my screen as well. So I again put the speakers on mute. I hope you can hear us. So okay, I start with the basic ones and then work it up, and I will try to answer to the best of my knowledge, which may not be complete. Standard disclaimer. What is DDR clock rate? Is this 400 megahertz? There used to be 400 megahertz, right? But that was the year maybe 2003-4. Now we are talking about 6400 megahertz. You have, if you see the latest specifications, they are even higher. So the clock rate has increased. It was 400 megahertz at some point of time, and it has evolved. So this is in answer to Mr. Rajnikant Ayars. Thanks for your question. The next question is how signaling standards evolved from DDR1 to DDR4. Now, I am doubtful what is the exact, when you say signaling standard, is it the single-ended, double-ended, stub transmitter, SSTLs? Then I am not exactly up to speed on the analog side of it, right? Those technology I handle more on the protocol side. But yes, there have been things like in DDR3, there is something called on-die terminations, which have been introduced, and control has been given to the controller. So what an on-die, so this was definitely an addition on the DDR standards. Okay, ODTs started getting explicitly added DDR3 onwards. And what happens there is, for the benefit of the others, at the lower speeds, things worked. At the higher speeds in DRAMs, suddenly the the whole concepts of transmission lines, the reflections, they started appearing, which the DRAM controller guys never had to bother about. So then to terminate a line and so that the things do not reflect back from the other end, the ODTs were introduced and the ODT control was given to the controller. So yes, there were, signaling evolution apart from the protocol part. Sriman Ojapalli has asked if we have QDR, why we are using DDR. Okay, so the QDR, yeah, for each 90 degree you do it, but you have to understand that it comes again at a cost. It again comes at a cost. If we need to have a QDR DRAM, then the complexity of it would be high. Till now, the dual data rate with higher and higher frequency, as I said, I am aware of 6400s you will see in the JEDEC that had been deemed enough. But I understand if the cost benefit matters, maybe we will see QDRs also. I am unaware whether I see QDR DRAMs already in. And another note of interest, if people want, inside, we call it DDR, but inside the memory, in the core, they do not do DDR access. They do actually a single clock edge access. On the interface, they just make it DDR. The point which I want to underline is that there is a difficulty to even do DDR, even though we do DDR. So I can understand that QDR will be much more difficult. As of now, my knowledge is here. Is this much, and I would let it there. If there is further, maybe you can read more literature and ask and approach me so later. Please throw light on some light on DQS. This would be the last question which I would take on this channel before going. So it's a very good question. There was no DQS around the 2000, the 1999-2000 single data rate, low speed data. They never had a DQS. For the uninitiated, DQ means data, DQNs means data strobe. But when at the time of the year 2000, means at that point of time, 400, 666 itself was higher frequency, it was felt that if the controller along with the data also sends the strobe with which to sample the data, we can go to higher speeds. So that is the rationale of introducing DQS from, I am not sure whether first DDR, the so-called DDR1 had DQS, but the DQS had started from DDR2 onwards. Another interesting fact which I would like to share is, if any of you are there in the typical industry memory controller design, previously the design of the controller and as well as the design of the so-called DRAM physical layer was done by the same person, same team. But as we went to higher and higher frequencies, the beginning of which was the introduction of DQS, you might be knowing that in any standard industry, the physical layer team would be a separate team than the memory controller protocol team, because things have become involved so much on the physical layer. So thanks for the excellent questions. I think it gives me also the vibe about, and it gives me a good vibe. So now I would stop it here and I would move to the next couple of slides. And then again, we can throw open for the questions. So after this, you guys can keep entering your questions, okay? When I intercept again, I will answer the questions. So now just to check whether am I still audible? Again, the standard thing.
Yes, we are very audible and everybody could hear you.
Okay. So
you can continue.
Yes. So this is the picture of a DIMM and the DRAMs, the concept which I was talking about a couple of slides back. Here, just let us have a quick recap here. And for the time being, forget, I told you that bank to rank, you cannot watch, I cannot show you. So think about the device, think about the DIMM, think about the ECC DIMM. Okay, just keep these in mind. And with that as a background, let me come to this. Friends, this is the picture of two DIMMs. Okay, and these black squares, or I don't know, the rectangles or squares, whatever they are, these are the devices I was talking about, right? And if you remember, I also said that in the industry, you do not access a device by its own. They are always bunched together like this on a small PCB, and then the whole damn PCB is actually put in the slot or taken out. Those of you who have the habit of playing with your systems will see such familiar thing. So when each such device together are put on a board, it is called the DIMM, dual inline memory module. I had once got a question, what is so dual inline about it? I honestly cannot say. Maybe I don't know. But so these are called the DIMMs. Okay. There are some very interesting things to note in this picture. First of all, from trivial to the technical, Elpida. I am not sure whether this company still exists under the same name and whether this company is still manufacturing memories. The DRAM memory business is a brutal, unpredictable, not for the faint-hearted business. There are names which were the kings and have gone off because the cost of the DRAMs are very important, but somehow their costs are extremely cyclical, and it is not. It is a difficult business to run. So right now, for your understanding, the popular, and I don't know whether they are the only ones, the DRAM vendors are SK Hynix, based in Korea, South Korea, Samsung, based in South Korea, and Micron, based in US. There was Elpida at some point of time. There was Infineon. They do exist, but I do not know whether their DRAM business is still intact. Okay, so so this shows that how dated this slide is. I had created it maybe first. I had created it maybe 13, 14 years back. So that is one aspect. You understand that how the small devices make the bigger DIMM. Another thing to note is there is no ninth device in either one of these. You see something small here, but ignore it for now. There are only 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. What this invariably means, and I cannot explain the details, that this is not an ECC DIMM. For ECC, if you remember, error correction and checking ECC DIMMs are more fault tolerant, more resilient DIMMs. They would have on top of these 8 devices, they would have a 9th device. So the very fact that the 9th device is not visible, meaning without knowing anything, I can claim that these are all non-ECC simple DIMMs. What is this thing out here? I can make a guess because what happens is that, when a DIMM is put into a slot, the BIOS, or the system needs to know what kind of memory got connected, how much capacity it is in. How will it know? It queries the DRAM through a side bus, through a narrow side bus SPD interface to ask it, hey, what kind of a memory are you? What is your capacity? Who is the vendor? Because that would be needed by the system BIOS to program something to operate the system properly. Those information are not stored in these black chips, the basic devices. I am guessing that this particular device is that interface which contains that information, that it has the vendor details. So when the system is querying this particular DIMM, this is the guy who will be responding with those. Do I want to cover anything more here of interest? There is one set, but I would take a break here and throw again. I will just check to see. I will do just a quick check. I know Mr. Alok Das might be getting bored, but I really need to know. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Thank you. I will look at the question. Okay, there is something in the chat. Niharika Gupta, why only chip select is not shared? Just one second. And I will again the thing. Yeah, so Niharika Gupta, if I understand your question, it's a pity I can't hear you, but I think maybe your question was related to that channel page. Yes, where I had claimed that in a channel, the address, data, data strobe, command are shared. Chip select is not shared. It's shared because chip select is the only signal. So you know what happens? Why the chip select is not shared? Look at this picture here. This is one channel. Okay, this common red line is passing through both of them. It indicates those shared buses. But then when you are accessing it, right, when you are asking, hey, give me data, you will need to tell this guy, give me data. Or you will need to say, you give me data. You cannot ask both of them to give the data because then it will clash on the shared bus. And then how do you tell a system that you give me, not the other one? It is the chip select. And that so the chip select must be the wire which is not shared, because that is the only signal through which you will exclusively communicate with one component, and these are called DIMMs. Okay, that I told a number of times. For one DIMM of a channel is made up of multiple DIMMs. To access a particular DIMM, you need to address that particular DIMM, and that is why you need a chip select, and that cannot be shared. That is the answer to this question. Good question. And I will now go to the Q&A. Okay, Rajnikant AR, thank you. For a PC, which option is better? 2 cards with 8 GB each or 1 card with 16 GB? It would be 1 card with 16 GB. The reason is when you have 2 cards with 8 GB, you would need to so 2 cards are electrically 2 drivers. Okay, and whenever you have 2 drivers, you will need to take care of turnarounds when you are accessing one card versus the another card, and those turnarounds will create bubbles. Means okay, I'm using technical. So you will need to access one, need to put some gap, and then put the another one in case of 2 cards, and that will deteriorate your performance. So if everything else is same, see, I'm very careful here. If everything else is same and you just need to choose between 2 8 GB or 116 GB, go with 116 GB. Okay. Okay, this is regarding this thing. Fine. I think there is not much. I think we have just 15 minutes left. I will go to the maybe the last slide which I intend to present here. There was a quiz. I think this is too involved for this audience. Yeah, so there are a lot of slides, folks. I would keep it at the one which is suitable for this audience. Okay, so please familiarize yourself with this terminology and the hierarchy which it indicates. Okay, so you have got multiple columns. Multiple columns make up a row in the DRAMs. Multiple rows make up a bank. Multiple banks make a bank group. Multiple bank groups make a chip or a device. And this is where you first come into the visible zone. As you have seen, multiple chip devices, I might not have introduced the concept of rank. It is a bit involved, but you saw the DIMM, which are kind of related. Multiple chip or device makes a rank. Multiple ranks make a DIMM, and multiple DIMMs make a channel. Why knowing this hierarchy is extremely important for controller design? Because you need to have when we access a memory, we give an address and we get the data. So the addresses are multi-bits, right? 32-bit, 48-bit, depending upon what the system is. You have to pick and choose certain number of bits from those addresses for the column, row, bank group, etc. And this hierarchy is very important in understanding which bits you assign for what purpose. Meaning you can map bit 0 to 9 of your system address to the column. You can also assign bit 0 to 9 to the row, and feature wise, nothing will go wrong. But the system performance can vary wildly if you do not do it appropriately. Understanding why it impacts the performance so wide is not suitable for this forum. But just if you take away with you the information or the saying that there is a hierarchy, you need to know the hierarchy to extract maximum performance out of your DRAM controller design. That is what I would leave you with. I would now slide through all of the slides. I cannot explain all of them here. Limited time. Let me see if there is something more interesting. I will stay with this concept of refresh because I think this is the most popular name which is associated with DRAM. A person who knows nothing about the DRAM will also know that there is something called refresh. I have explained and I would still touch upon what is the refresh. First of all, refresh is an overhead. Ideally, I would have liked a DRAM memory which has the goodness of the DRAM, but without the refresh. Why? Because when I do a refresh, I am unable to do reads and writes from that DRAM for the duration of the refresh. This is a penalty for the system, but this is a necessary evil. We have to do the refreshes because refreshes are what? They maintain the memory of the DRAM at the junction capacitors. And hence, even if you don't like it, you will have to give it. And since you understand this is a trade-off, right? This is a necessary evil. There are a lot of innovations, lot of patents in doing the refreshes intelligently, doing tricks with refreshes so that you get to maintain the integrity of the memory. At the same time, you lose minimum performance because of the refresh. You cannot make it 0, but you can minimize the impact of refreshes. I will leave it there. These are all very important concepts. This quiz is not for this mode register set, ZQ calibration. That's it, folks. So let me just go back to the questions and let me hear the voices again. Let me see. Okay, again, there is an echo. No, I don't hear the echo. Okay. Please let the technical words flowing. Okay, I think this is a feedback for maybe some next session where I can go through these slides in detail. My suggestion is that Q&A can be taken in the varying. It's breaking the flow of understanding. For a PC, which option is better to cut? Okay, this gives me an idea. I just thought it up, this thing. I was means it would be interesting to know what does this 2 GB PC2 5300 means, and I could guess some of them, and I would just like to share because it will tell you something about the memory. 2 GB is of course the capacity. Capacity of what? Capacity of this single chip? No, all the chips together, the total capacity of this whole DIMM is 2 GB. One point of interest, in the literature, in the data sheets, you will see the capacities being sometimes specified in small b, which stands for bit, or the capital B, which stands for byte. But when you say it is not the choice of the people to use small b or big B anyway, when we talk about the memory capacity of the whole DRAM, we talk about gigabyte, the capital B. When we talk about the memory capacity of a single single device, we talk in small b, gigabit. What does PC2 mean? PC2 actually means that these DRAMs are DDR2. Remember the family of DRAMs? So this is the DDR2. And what is this 5300? If you say that it is 5300 megahertz, sorry, no. When DDR2 was there, the maximum speed used to be 400 or 667 megahertz. What it is that the total capacity is, if you multiply the speed with the number of bytes, okay, you would get the 5300. So I am making a guess. I cannot confirm that this actual speed of operation was 5300 divided by 8, and that comes to, I think, 666.67. So the speed of this particular piece of thing was 666.67. What was 555? I do not know. So I think this was an interesting information. We are nearing the end of the time. I would again go to the questions. Okay, I see something in the chat. Sherwin Bryan, to all panelists, what does frequency in RAM means? Is it at which the processor and RAM talk to each other? Precisely. It is the frequency at which the processor and the RAM talks to each other. The processor internally has much higher speeds. Okay, it can have higher speeds, but when it is coming at the periphery and talking with the DRAMs, which is connected on the board, so there is a clock pin, and that clock, that clock is, there is a command clock, and the frequency which generally goes right, 666, or nowadays 4667, 6400. Those are actually the double the command clock rate. So, but on a nutshell, yes, the frequency of the RAM means at which processor and RAM, I think you meant RAM here, RAM talk to each other. So yes, thank you. Let me see whether in the this window Q&A, do I have any more question? Okay. Generate feedback. Is this okay? So let me go step by step. Sriman Ojapalli asked, what are the limitations for backward compatibility of DDR from generation from DDR1 to DDR5? Okay, I mean to say that if you see a controller which talks with DDR3 or a 4, DDR4, would it be talking with the DDR3? It depends upon what controller you have created, right? So you might hear some vendors talking, I have a DDR which controls DDR1, 2, 3, 4. Nice bragging, right? But generally, in trying to do that, they will be compromising on the best of all. But then again, I was talking about the business of the DRAMs, right? Very unpredictable. What it means is that any semiconductor company, if it designing a memory controller, will generally not make a controller which is suitable only for DDR3 or only for DDR4 or only for DDR5. It will generally cover at least the present day DRAM and the next generation DRAM, because that will keep the product stable. I don't know whether this was the intent of this thing, but I think that was the answer. What are the limitations of backward? I have last 5 minutes. Let me, I won't go into detail. Is the speed is the same clock rate? What speed is he talking about? Maybe the 5300 divided by 8 I was talking about. Yes, that is the same as the clock rate. Is a ECC DRAM, is there a requirement of refresh of the ECC bit? Answer is yes. Short answer is yes. And the ECC is not any special. It is just the 9th DRAM, which is exactly like this. We interpret it as ECC. Okay. So the short answer is yes. Even ECC DRAMs need the refresh. We often hear the word memory controller. What exactly is its role? Fantastic questions. Look, I have talked to you about only this card, which is the memory, which is sitting on the board. Now, to access memory, to access the data out of this memory, you need a controller. the CPU does not know the intricacies of refreshes, and these memories have got a lot of peculiarities about them. We do not want to throw all those peculiarities at the poor processor, right? So all that responsibility is taken by the word memory controller, which kind of sits between the main processor and these memories cards which I am talking about. So that is the memory controller. I think this is it. Am I missing any more questions? Just let me see. Can we build DRAM on 2.5D technology? Yes, ma'am, you can. Not only you can, you have. And I would not tell any more here because I am not sure what is there in the common domain and what is there in the exclusive domain. But 2.5D is definitely there. Okay. I think maybe it is, I can name the vendor also, but let me not take that. Let me not go into the gray zones. Yes, it is there. 2.5D is definitely there. Okay, my question is compatibility in designing a board that has DRAM. Board designed for one generation cannot be used for another. No, sir, you are right. It cannot be used very easily because you see the speeds. Generally, what is true from one DRAM to another is a significant jump in the max bin speed. So maybe 3200 from DDR3 or okay, maybe 3200 of a DDR4 to a much higher frequency of 4667. I don't think any board design could be made optimally for both of them, right? Yeah, you can make a higher frequency board, but then its cost will be so high that using it for a DRAM DDR4 or a DDR3 would again be a waste of the cost. So it is difficult. It is difficult. Okay, not impossible, but it is difficult. And generally, for cost reasons, people won't do that. I think that's it. I think we have just 2 minutes left. The questions, I would again put up my speakers on. Over to you, Dr. Girija or Mr. Logdas. I am done.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Dr. Jalada, I think you can make the closing remarks and take it forward.
Thank you. Thank you for your wonderful information about DRAM architecture. Thank you, everyone. We appreciate you being here. Thank you once again for joining us. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Samram sir and Alok sir. Parmeshwari Acharya sir. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Goodbye, everybody. Stay safe.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.